Observational comedy requires a certain sense of a certain air of superiority. After all, you're passing judgment on the world, and it can be funny observational comedy, but it's important not to let that sense of superiority go to your head, uh, especially if you're somewhat clueless about the world, because then you're liable to turn into Bill Maher, clueless and smug about it. Bill wanted to cross the picket line during the writers' strike. He felt, and he said this, that writers were not owed a living for the work that they produce. That say, for example, the guy who wrote that first season of True Detective that everybody loves, he should be out pushing carts at Whole Foods to make ends meet. And of course, we should still somehow expect the same quality of work from him. I don't know what Bill's day job is, but I do know he has no problem taking checks for doing some of the most trash stand up I have ever heard. This clip is from 10 years ago, him doing stand up. Judging by his ever moving hairline, I'd say it's about maybe 12 years ago. Um, and it's important that we listen to an older clip because people really need to know that Bill Maher was never actually funny. This is Bill talking about the ladies.
If women ran the world, there'd be no wars. Being pregnant is sexy. You know, just a whole roster of things that we don't really believe, but we pretend to believe because it's easier to make women nod than to live in the doghouse.
He still uses that phrase.
I heard one on daytime TV the other day. Only a woman could have said this, and of course everyone pretended it was true. She said a couple should explore their mutual fantasies.
Fake laugh.
There are no such things as mutual fantasies. Yours bore us, ours offend you.
I used to know a woman who was always wanting to wrestle me. I suspect for sexual reasons. That particular kink is not. It's not my particular bag of tea, but I would not characterize it as boring. I've heard a lot of fantasies from women. Um, Not a lot, but a number of fantasies from different women. Some I've entertained, some I have not. I heard there's one fantasy. I'm not going to go into details about it, but let's just say it might violate TOS, because uh, some may interpret it as slightly anti-Semitic. I I did not entertain that one. But Bill is absolutely clueless to this. He doesn't believe that women have sexual thoughts. And I imagine that the women he hangs out with would prefer it stay that way. Um, Clueless and smug.
Ladies, trust me, there is no fantasy where a handsome prince runs to you across a meadow and takes you in his arms and pledges his undying love and then comes on your face, okay?
Well, I think what Bill's suggesting there is that women are born. All men and all women are essentially sexually incompatible. They don't have mutual fantasies because men fantasize about facials, while women fantasize about scenes from Disney films. I knew Bill liked them young, but come on. No, what Bill's suggesting by that thing about the prince running through the meadow is that women don't actually have a sexual inner life. And Bill really kind of needs to hold on to that delusion because he needs it to protect his fragile ego. He has to believe that Women are not rejecting sex from him. Women are simply rejecting sex because they don't really like it the way men do. And by the way, a facial is not a sexual fantasy. It's a biological response that happens to land on someone's face. Uh, these pedestrian kinks are depressing me. Three ways are the worst. Let me tell you something. Here's what's your deepest. This is the conversation. This is how that conversation usually goes between guys. What's your deepest, darkest sexual fantasy? Well, you know how you have sex with a lady? Well, I want to have sex. I want to do that. But I want to do it with two ladies. And then you have to explain that that's not really a sexual fantasy. That's just basic math. Emphasis on the word basic. And then, of course, they'll come back with, that there's a menage a trois. That word's French. I know all sorts of foreign words like menage a trois and Yahtzee balls and Godzilla. Just because you say it in French doesn't make it less basic. You know, Bill's idol was Hugh Hefner. Hugh Hefner made paying for sex a lifestyle. Probably the worst sexual role model a man could possibly have. This idea, he created this idea of sex as a reward for wealth. When in reality, most of us had our sexual formative years in college when we were broke. Bill did not have that experience at Cornell, according to Bill. According to Bill, women didn't like him very much. Pretty much until he got the Tonight Show. So in Bill's mind, sex is a transactional situation. Women have to have a reason to have sex. Ignore that. That's just asshole.
That would be a mutual fantasy if you've ever seen a porn movie. But I think men are just tired of apologizing for being men, and I think women would be a lot happier.
Folks, how many of you have ever had to apologize to a woman for being a man? None of you? Okay, that's what I thought.
You'd stop making us apologize for it. You'd save yourselves a lot of wear and tear. For one thing, give you one example, no woman in America would ever get breast implants. Because if you really got inside the man's mind, you'd understand that it's never about big or little or short or tall or blonde or brunette. It's only about old and new.
I thought that the other day. I was watching John Oliver, and a preview for Real Time with Bill Maher is back came on, and I thought, old versus new. I chose new. John Oliver did a great thing about a very funny, informative thing about healthcare in prisons. Ended with a little note about we need to start having a conversation about prison abolition. And Bill's was just kind of a montage cut of guests chiding him for still being a bachelor. Because it's not 2023, and apparently that's still taboo. Ugh. You know, he had a podcast. He's got a podcast, and shows you how outdated he is. He's still coy about marijuana. He's talking to a guest, I think it's Jeff Ross or whatever. I don't know who it was, but he's like, he's got a joint in his hand. He goes, these are clove cigarettes. And then if I were Jeff Ross, I'd be a little worried, like, are we smoking angel dust or something? Like, why are you being coy about this? Why are you being secretive? Is this like, what is this? What is it? Are we smoking heroin? What is this? Is this Matt? What is this? What am I smoking? Why are you being weird about it? Jeff Ross reminded him that marijuana was legal. And Bill's response was something to the effect of, "No, it's still edgy in Alabama." Bill Maher, listen, this Friday, Bill's going to be talking about Gaza, and he's going to say something to the effect of, "We have to murder children in self defense." About children being murdered in self defense. That's He's going to make some kind of justification for violence. He's really mostly doing it not just because he's generally a piece of shit, but because he needs to trend on Twitter. He needs to show HBO that the old man still has it. Because John Oliver is the new, and he's the old. And he knows he's surpassed his expiration date.